But hey, people say that Apple's ahead of the curve. I don't think they actually have used any operating system other than an Apple operating system, so they probably don't actually know what the curve is other than just what they see on Apple products. It's just that Apple products tend to take concepts that have already been there and then make them really shiny. And that's Macintosh summed up, is concepts that were already there, packaged and made really shiny. Like Apple, or rather Mac OS 10 is basically just FreeBSD. Like, I mean, essentially it is FreeBSD. I'm sure you could modify Apple, not libraries, but applications to work on FreeBSD. I'm sure you could do that. It's a Unix-like system anyway, so there's a lot of cross compatibility between Macintosh stuff and Linux and Unix-like stuff. So, but anyway, that's a whole long concept we could get into. We could get into a whole long discussion about the development of Mac OS 10 if you want, if you want to. The beta of OS 10 actually looked a whole heck of a lot like OS 9. It was basically like OS 10 with an OS 9 skin. It was really, really bizarre. But anyway, we're expecting quite a lot of cool stuff coming out of Apple coming up soon-ish, I guess. Wired has been talking about it, and I don't know if excited would be the right word, but I'm certainly interested to see what Apple is going to come out with. Wired has a story about the new developments that are going to be coming out this week. The Apple event schedule is nearly basically clockwork. There's a handful of keynote addresses every year, and most things never change. Tim Cook is going to stand in front of a large screen, scrolling through simple slides, just as Steve Jobs used to do back in the heyday. And it's basically going to be exactly the same as it has been. So this September event for the last few years has been where Apple talks about iPhones, and Apple, don't forget, is of course an iPhone company. Apple's main selling point is the iPhone, after all, and a few services and such. But really, Apple is the iPhone. Like, when it comes right down to it, Apple's main revenue comes in from the iPhone and App Store revenue and that sort of thing. The Mac is not selling as well as it used to. Maybe actually Apple computers have never really sold that well. That's not to say they don't turn a profit, because they do, but Apple computers have never been the top selling computers simply because it's one company putting out one thing. That's not to say Apple's doing poorly. I mean, certainly it's not. I mean, the iPhone is still a really popular phone. Lots of people like it. Lots of people use it. And if it works for you, then hey, cool. But I need to do things that can't really be done on an iPhone. So that's just me. I mean, if you want to use an iPhone, that's totally cool. And you can certainly function just fine using an iPhone. I just like Android a little bit better. Not that it's any safer or any inherently better than the iPhone. I just like the Android phones. It's my personal preference. But anyway, the September event for the last few years has pretty much been the same, just now adding some iPhone updates and Apple Watch, all sorts of different things. But really, it's been basically the same keynote address for the last 30 years. It's not changed a whole lot. So if you've been holding out for an upgrade, rest assured there is going to be an iPhone, a new iPhone. Apple's release schedule tends to go kind of back and forth. 1 year, a big redesign, the next, an under the hood upgrade. So you'll notice that where you get the iPhone, say 6, and then you get the 6 Plus, and that's what we're going to be seeing. Remember the iPhone 5, and you had the iPhone 5S. It's the same phone basically, but with some under the hood upgrades. But functionally, it's almost the same. Fortunately, they fixed that problem where if you held the iPhone the wrong way, it would drop a call, which was a really stupid design problem. And Steve Jobs' response was basically to tell people to stop holding the phone that way. Yeah, you can see why I'm not a huge fan of Apple. It's just, I don't know. But the Apple TV is not a bad product either. It's a good streaming box. It's like every other Apple product, it's a little bit overpriced, but that's just the way of it. I mean, you pay what you want to pay. It's not like Apple has a monopoly on streaming boxes or computers or really anything. So you have a choice. And if you want to buy the more expensive, albeit nicer looking streaming box, the Apple TV, then go right ahead. I know Eric here at Hot News Talk Radio. He has a Apple TV and he likes it a lot. So, hey, can't really fault it. He's a smart guy. He uses an Apple TV. I use a really horrible, outdated Roku LT, mostly because my parents bought it and I just haven't gotten around to getting a new one. But that's just how it be. So Apple is not making a new television. Fortunately, they tried that in the 90s. It didn't work out very well. Basically, it was just a Apple computer stuffed into a TV. basically, it was an Apple computer that had a TV tuner built into it and a CRT computer or TV screen built into it. That was it. Not very great. So Apple is not making another TV. A few things that are relatively certain, though, is that the new streaming box is going to be costing about $149. Is going to be much faster. It's going to have a redesigned remote with a touchpad, of course, because it's Apple, for easier input and motion controls as well, which is an odd sort of add-on. You can apparently play Wii-style games on your Apple TV. It's going to be running a much more complete version of Apple's software, including Siri and an app store. So really, Apple's trying to unify the process, is trying to unify the Apple experience so that you have the same experience across every platform. That's not a bad move. I mean, it's really not. That's not a bad move at all. The thing is, though, Apple has a bit of a disadvantage, actually, compared to Google in this regard, in that Google is essentially web-based. And Apple is not really hardware-based, but it's more hardware and software-based than Google is. So, like, I can use Google Voice services on an Apple computer if I want to. I don't know of anyone who actually uses Google Voice for search, or the Google Voice thing that's in the search bar for actual searching. I don't know anyone who does that, but I do know quite a few people who use Google Now. And it's the same service stretched across web apps. And that's really an advantage for the Android phones, or not just Android, but Google products in general. Is Google beating Apple? Not real. I mean, kind of, yeah, but it's just, again, it's up to user preference. There's a lot of debate about whether or not Google's beating Apple. Certainly Google's beating Apple when it comes to adoption rates, just because it's a web app and you have to adopt it, but Apple computers they still carry a pretty big cult following and a pretty big mainstream following too. Walk into any startup in any small business, you're going to see an Apple computer. That's just how it is. And again, that's fine. If it works for you, that's fine. You walk into an editing studio, I bet you they're going to be using Apple computers. They're going to be using iMacs for their editing on Final Cut Pro. That's just how it is. So this is where things start to get dicey, though, with the streaming boxes, though, is that Apple has had trouble getting cable content with the Apple TV because, again, you have run into licensing problems, and Apple can't really afford to get a monopoly on that. So what do? Well, will an app store mean that these providers, again, there's no app store on Apple TV yet, but there is going to be. An app store is going to mean that these providers are going to be getting on board with ESPN, HBO, Netflix is already on board, lots of other things. So initially, the TV is going to be all about gaming, which is an odd move for Apple because I never really have associated gaming with Apple. Really, gaming hasn't been an Apple thing in ever. There was gaming. I mean, there has been gaming on Apple computers for forever. A lot of really popular games are actually coded on the Apple II. Think of Prince of Persia. That was an Apple II game, believe it or not. The Apple II GS was used in developing Super Nintendo games. So it's not like Apple and gaming are two separate things. It's just that Apple and gaming don't really mentally coalesce. I mean, yeah, you can game on a Mac computer. There's Steam for it. It's just that I don't really think about Apple when I think about gaming. It's just not something that I do. But maybe that's my fault and not Apple's fault. I don't know. So it doesn't really mean that it's going to be a gaming console, the new Apple TV. But it means that there's going to be probably some mobile apps ported over. We're going to be seeing Angry Birds most likely on Apple TV if we haven't already. There's going to be possibly maybe new iPads. Of course, the big thing that everyone's waiting for is the iPhone, the new iPhone. Most likely, we're going to be seeing an iPhone 6 Plus. That's what everyone's waiting for. The hype train is already taken off. There's going to be an iPhone 6 Plus. We can pretty much bet on that. So there's most certainly going to be two phones. After all, we have the iPhone 6, and then we have the iPhone 6. You have the big one, and you have the little one. And we're waiting on a new version of both. Probably there's going to be two iPhones released at basically exactly the same time. And that's what we're sort of waiting for. What's less certain is the fate of the smaller phones, smaller than both the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus, which is the iPhone C, or iPhone 5C, I should say. There is a market for it. I do know people who own them, so it's not like nobody buys them. But we're not sure what Apple has planned for smaller phones. We'll just have to wait and see. So it's an interesting market, to say the least. Mobile and computer markets are always weird. It's hard to predict what's going to be happening sometimes, but Apple's been pretty much a linear company for the last 10 years. They've been riding the same train for forever. The iPhone has pretty much cinched it for Apple. When it comes right down to it, the iPhone is going to be Apple for a long time now. They have the iPhone, you have the iPad, and you have the MacBooks. And those are really the big selling points for Apple. And not to mention the security that you get with Apple products. I mean, there's a lot of good selling points for Apple. And I'm not saying that as an Apple fanboy by any means, because I am not. I haven't used an Apple computer in forever. So I'm not really an Apple fanboy, but I will admit that Apple computers do have a pretty good following, and they're not terrible machines. I just don't like them. If you use them, that's cool. I just don't like them. That's the thing. So I don't know. It's a cult following sort of thing. I'm not big into it, but I get why people like them. Well, anyway, there's a lot more going on in tech news. We'll keep following the Apple conference as it comes about. We're expecting it to be this week, and I'll keep my eyes peeled for any sort of new updates that come out of it that are actually pertinent and aren't just like, we've updated our services so that there's a new license agreement for the App Store. Nobody cares about that. We're not going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about new hardware that comes out, because a new licensing agreement, while interesting to me, probably not so much to you, because it doesn't really mean a whole lot unless there's a big privacy update. That, of course, we'll talk about that. But anyway, Amazon is launching a food delivery service via Prime Now, starting in Seattle. Amazon has announced this morning, actually, that it's going to be making restaurant delivery an option via its 1-hour delivery app, Prime Now. Now, this is cool news for those of you who live in Seattle, but for those of us who don't, not really that exciting. But Chattanooga, don't worry, is a pretty big-ish market. It's a medium market anyway in terms of Nielsen ratings. It's a medium market. So we're not a small market. That would be like Dalton, but we're a medium market. So that means we're somewhere in between like Knoxville and Cleveland. So we're a medium market here in Chattanooga. And that's good for us, actually, because that means we get test products, we get all sorts of cool things. Being in a medium market actually has a lot of benefits. I wouldn't want to be in a not medium market. I'll put it that way. I'm not a rural guy by any means. I can't stand like the countryside. I could do that for a weekend, but I could not do that for any time longer than a weekend. I could do vacation with no internet, but if it came down to like, you're going to live here in Hobbiton for the rest of your life, I couldn't do that. No, that I would move out or die. I could not do that. So the way it is now, I like living where I live, because I don't actually live in Chattanooga proper. I live in the greater metropolitan area, meaning that I live in a rural-ish area, but I still have access to pretty high-speed internet, and I can drive 10 minutes and get downtown. So where I live is great. And actually, a lot of us live in an area like that. Most of us don't actually live in the city proper. A lot of us live in the outlying neighborhoods, and some of us live in Cleveland too. And Saudi Daisy is another good example. It's an established city, but it's very separate from Chattanooga, but it's within driving distance of Chattanooga. And we have Hickson too, which is not really part of the downtown area proper, but it's really easy to access Chattanooga from Hickson and areas like that, like Ringgold, for example. You can just get there quickly, but you have the benefits of living in Georgia. So, woohoo. Well, anyway, Prime Delivery is coming to Seattle, hopefully going to be coming to Chattanooga soon. The service is going to be allowing Prime members, of which there are quite a few, to view the menus from participating restaurants and place orders in that app, similar to the order tracking that's available right now in Prime Now. Customers will also be able to track their food delivery order in real time as it's being prepped by the restaurant, and then as the driver hits the road heading your way. Now, this is not a new concept by any means. We actually have a concept like that here in Chattanooga already. You can get food delivered straight to your door from different restaurants in the Chattanooga area already. So this is not a new idea, not a new concept by any means, but it's being packaged from Amazon, and thus meaning that we're probably going to see broader adoption, and even restaurants that market themselves or itself, I guess. We're going to be seeing restaurants that will market as being compatible with Amazon Prime Now. So you might even see restaurants that exclusively deal with Amazon Prime Now in the near future. There is that distinct possibility where essentially instead of having your own delivery drivers, you outsource that to Amazon and Amazon gets a cut. So that's not a bad idea, actually. In fact, that could be a whole new market that we hadn't even thought of before when it comes to offering driver delivery services. So there's a lot going on there. Of course, Uber is probably going to be jumping on that bandwagon if they haven't already. In fact, I think maybe Uber already has. Lyft will have to get on board. Different taxi companies here in our area may have to get on board. And again, this is not a new idea, but because we see a major player adopting it, That's good news for us, basically, because it means more competition, it means more development. It's just good news for us, the customers. And that's great. As a customer, not as a service offerer, although yeah, you could consider the radio show a service, I guess. So I guess I am a service provider in some sense, but in a very casual is the word, but in not a very not in a sense that you usually think of anyway. Like you don't usually think of radio show hosts as being service providers, as more as discussion moderators, maybe. But anyway, this means that us as customers, because I am a customer, I buy things, right? It means that we get better services as a result, and that's great. Competition in a free market is always a good thing, and so we get better services out of it. Great. So slightly different from how Prime Now works today is this new service is going to be offering free 2-hour deliveries. So 2-hour deliveries are going to be free, but a $7.99 fee for 1-hour deliveries. Now, if we're talking about food ordering, if we're talking about a 2-hour wait time, you may have to order before you get hungry, which is not something that I do, but it's not a terrible idea either, because then that means that you're more likely to pick healthier options. Not a bad idea, actually. Healthful options, I should say, because my mom is an English major and she always gets on me for this one. A living thing can be healthy, but a non-inanimate object cannot be healthy. So if you're talking about food is actually healthful, but not healthy. Anyway, nobody cares about that. The company also says, Amazon being the company, that its restaurant partners, the service is going to be allowing them to tap into Amazon's best customers, that is, those who pay the $99 a year for Amazon Prime and who maintain payment information in Amazon Wallet. Different companies also have Prime, which is a big advantage to companies which order things pretty often. I'm actually thinking about proposing that to some of the higher ups here. We may be getting Amazon Prime here at the office. Who knows? It could be useful. So at launch, Prime Now is going to be working with dozens of local restaurants in the Seattle area, of course, on a rev share basis, meaning revenue sharing, including Cactus, Wild Ginger, all sorts of different Seattle restaurants that we've never heard of. The announcement comes following recent sightings of online job listings on LinkedIn and Amazon's own job sites, which noticed that the company was seeking employees for a dedicated division called Amazon Restaurants in Seattle and New York. In addition, TechCrunch, the site which we're reading from right now, previously reported that the company was testing a Grubhub competitor, I should say, last year, and it popped up within Amazon Local in December. Now, this is not an idea that's exclusive to Amazon, believe it or not, because Google Express is now making a trip to the grocery store. Now, this is not necessarily an exclusive food delivery service. Keep that in mind. But grocery delivery, further isolating us from the outside world, which I'm a huge fan of, is coming to our doorstep quite soon. So in Milwaukee, have you used Google Express yet? Probably not, because we're in Chattanooga. The online service is helping to make shopping simpler and more convenient in southeastern Wisconsin. Now, again, this is not local to us, but it will be quite soon. You can shop local stores online, and you can get items delivered the same day or overnight as well. Brian Elliott is the general manager of Google Express, and he gave a few words about it, saying that actually you can order stuff from Costco, Walgreens, Toys R Us, Target, a few other Milwaukee centered businesses right there from Google Express. Now, when are we going to be seeing Google Express here in the Chattanooga area? I don't actually know, but I hope soon, because it's a cool idea. You can't really beat something like that with groceries being delivered straight to your door. And again, that's going to mean that there's going to be local competitors to ideas such as that one too, which is always a good thing. So I'm very, very excited about the future of delivery. Now, of course, we could be taking drones into account as well if your deliveries are under, say, 5 pounds. Like, for instance, I need a USB drive right now. I need a 32 gig drive right now. And I'm not going to drive out to the store to get it, because then gas is expensive. I have work to do here. I can't just leave. So what do? You pull up Google Express and order it straight from, say, Target or Costco or whatever. And in an hour or two, you have a SanDisk 128 gigabyte flash drive right there on your doorstep or your office lobby, whatever it is. So very, very useful. Hopefully local competitors will pop up too, and this will stimulate our local economy and, of course, employ local drivers too, even if there's not a local business centering on this idea. So we really can't lose when it comes right down to it. Local economy is going to be stimulated, and that's always a good thing. This is Hot News Talk Radio right here, AM 1240. This is Digital Drive that you're listening to. I'm your host, Russell, and we're going to be talking more about Google Express, going to be talking about Apple and the whole conference that's going on with that, and some more tech updates right here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240 and hotnewstalkradio.com.
This is a modern world. This is the modern world. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing about my...
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Sky Aerial Services uses advanced drone technology to give you a better perspective and depth of your property and project. We offer aerial photography and video for your business, farm, home, or advertising campaigns, as well as editing services to complete the experience. Call us at 423-521-0284 and see how we can help you tell your story about your business, property, or project. We work with real estate professionals, both commercial and residential, developers, engineer inspectors, surveyors, ad agencies, auto and boat dealers, mapping services, insurance inspectors, corporate marketing, charity events, weddings, and photographers. Our consultation is free. Call 423-521-0284. That's 423-521-0284, or visit our website, skyaerialservices.com. Sky Aerial Services. The sky is our limit.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection: loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
This is America Now with Meghan McCain.
Al Gore running is crazy. You're flying around in your private jet all over the world, and you want average Americans to care about the environment. Don't you think you should be doing your part as well?
Meghan McCain, weekdays at 7 p.m.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, I'm David Tulis, inviting you to make the move with me 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. The David Tulis Show, featuring Nooganomics.com for Chattanooga and beyond. 9 to 11 a.m. weekdays.
Hot News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240. Hot News Talk 1240.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
5680. Fox News Radio. I'm William Wu. In the fight over the Iran nuclear deal, Senate Democrats have now managed to secure the critical number of votes, 41, needed to block a disapproval resolution.
Calls from your credit card companies, and you want to put a stop to
President
gather
Obama
your
is
bills
asking
now
the
and
United
call
States
the
Congress
debt
to do
helpline.
is unique, historically and dangerously
we've been trying to reach you. If we
The
don't hear
results
from you
will
soon,
be
your account will go
Former
into
Vice President Dick
We can
Cheney
help
at the
you
American
stop the late
Enterprise
and over limit
Institute in
fees on
D.C.
most of your
Senate
credit
Minority
cards
Leader Harry
and
Reid
reduce
says
your
the
high
nuclear
interest rates
agreement
in
will
some
survive.
cases up to 60%.
Mr. Jackson, this is our last warning call. The next call will be from our
Opponents of the deal are pushing
Get your
senators
debt and
to allow
credit card
a final
bills
vote
under
on
control.
the disapproval
Gather your
resolution.
bills and
Family
call
of Freddie
today for
Gray,
a
who
free
died after being
consultation
injured
on
while
how
in
we can
police
help
custody,
you get
reaches
out
a
of debt.
$6.4 million wrongful death settlement with the city of Baltimore.
800-215-6812. That's 800-215.
Well then, this is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. We're talking about technology and quite a bit more. The UK is way, way far behind, which is just an example of how governments kind of always are. It's not surprising, really. I mean, when you look at it on its face, it's kind of laughable, actually, but it's an example of something that's far broader than just, oh, the government is behind and they don't understand kids. No, it's an example of how the government is behind in everything culturally, actually very disconnected, despite all the attempts to be very connected. The UK, now again, I know we're not in the UK. Well, you might be because we're on the internet, but chances are you're not in the UK. You might even be in Russia because we have a few listeners there. Hey, thanks. The UK is warning parents, I should say, about 90s internet teen slang. Now, I was not really on the internet that much in the 90s because I was, well, born a little bit too late for that. But I did use it a little bit. I think my first email address was actually in around the year 2000 or so. So I didn't really use the internet that much in the 90s. Just because I'm a youngin'. But I have had exposure to 90s internet slang just because I'm weird and I read 90s Usenet news group like blogs and stuff. I don't know why. I'm just weird. But the UK government has launched a new guide that's intended to help parents understand the internet slang used by teenagers, particularly ones who are a little bit excited, we'll put it that way, but somehow they forgot to update their information from the 1990s. So the official dictionary on government website Parent Info includes acronyms such as, well, PAW, which is Parents Are Watching. I've never seen anyone use that, by the way. GNOC, which is Get Naked on Camera. Again, never seen that one. Or KPC, Keep Parents Clueless. And yeah, there's also Zerg Rush, which they use, which is pretty funny because I've not seen a reference to Zerg Rush in ages and ages and ages. That's a reference to StarCraft, by the way. And LMIRL, which is Let's Meet in Real Life, with the addendum that it's fine if it's their friends. And even ASL gets a mention, which is kind of cool too. ASL is age, sex, and location. So you would reply with like typically 14/M/London, I guess, in this case. The news of this dangerous internet code was reported with a straight face by copy papers in The Guardian and The Telegraph, while Twitter people mocked the would-be moral panic. In fairness, though, it does seem like Parent Info simply lifted its information from the equally antiquated netlingo.com, which I really need to read, actually. But that's no excuse for a government to spread outdated info, although it's really not surprising that the government would spread outdated info. In fact, I don't think anyone at all is surprised that the internet would be, or rather that the government would spread outdated info. It's just behind the times, government is. It's kind of an outdated concept in and of itself, which is kind of funny, actually. It further displays how this is not the Cold War 1960s spy thriller government that we've had for a long time. We don't need that anymore. You know, again, it's not the Cold War 1960s spy thriller, so we don't really need the same form of government anymore. It's working based on paranoia, which doesn't really work on us that much anymore, at least not from government sources. I'm not made paranoid by the government. I'm paranoid of the government, perhaps, but not by it, if that makes any sense at all. What the government says, I take with many, many grains of salt. I take it with basically a whole kosher salt container. I don't really take anything the government says very seriously because there's no reason whatsoever to believe anything that they say. So government as a source is kind of lame these days. It's not very hip and cool, just like the references that the government is pushing out. Now, again, I know this is the UK and probably the guys in the US government are a little bit more up with the times, but that's another example of how the UK itself is kind of old and antiquated and outdated and very colonial and nobody needs it anymore. But anyway, I mean, for heaven's sake, they still have a king and queen, or at least a queen. They still have a monarchy in the UK. How can you say that it's very with it and to date when they still have a monarchy? I mean, come on, guys. Can you imagine if we still had a monarchy in the U.S.? Well, actually, I guess maybe we kind of do, but it's a shame because the rest of the Parent Info site actually does offer advice on some relevant and relatively unknown topics like the dangers of pro-anorexia communities on Tumblr and how to report abuse on Snapchat. Now, these are actually kind of important topics. If you're a parent, you should know about these things. But now all they need to do is address the menace of Netflix and chill, which actually they have. Netflix and chill, by the way, is kind of, I don't know if it's a euphemism, but nobody watches Netflix and chills. We'll put it that way. If a guy invites you over and you're a young lady to watch Netflix and chill, I can guarantee you he doesn't actually want to watch Netflix and talk about your biology reports. I guarantee you. But anyway, because I never watched Netflix and chill, I'll put it, actually, yeah, I did. Maybe I was just really lame. I guess I was a really lame teenager because I actually did legitimately want to just watch Netflix and hang out. So I guess I was just a really lame kid, which I know I was anyway. But anyway, moving on. Former Tesla engineer is accusing his boss of illegally, or rather is illegally, okay, let me rephrase this. A former Tesla engineer is accused of illegally accessing his former boss's email. There we go. Got to get that wording correctly because this is radio and people need to understand what the heck I'm talking about. A former Tesla mechanical engineer, according to Ars Technica, is now facing 2 counts of felony computer intrusion, according to a Thursday press release from the FBI. Nima Kalbasi, which sounds very delicious, is a 28-year-old Canadian citizen and is illegally accused of, I can't think of words today, is accused of illegally accessing his former boss's email account nearly 300 times during a period of about 30 days in late 2014 and early 2015. The 28-year-old Canadian citizen appeared before a federal judge in San Jose, California, late last month. He was arrested earlier while crossing the border from Canada into Vermont. So the federal criminal indictment alleges that during those unauthorized accesses, Kalbasi downloaded private emails detailing employee evaluations and customer complaints. Kalbasi also posted an email with a customer complaint report on a public website and made disparaging comments concerning the alleged quality issues that he had then, and they were known to be false and misleading, he says, and all while intending to harm Tesla's reputation and credibility. The court filings don't actually address specifically what information was stolen or published. In addition to the felony counts, Kalbasi is also facing 1 count of misdemeanor computer intrusion. If found guilty of all of them, he could face up to 11 years in prison. Neither Tesla nor Kalbasi's attorney immediately responded to any request for comment from Ars Technica. So we don't actually know for sure what information was leaked from Mr. Kalbasi, but we can assume that it's not very flattering. We'll put it that way. I can't imagine that is very flattering to Tesla. Now, I've not seen what leaked from this, so I don't actually know what the allegations are about, other than just unflattering information. So maybe he found out that Elon Musk has odd tastes in women or something like that. I don't know. Is Elon Musk married? I don't know. It really doesn't matter that much what the emails contained, but it does really kind of emphasize that, well, let's say it this way. Security is very important in every business that you're in. If you're in the car making business, then security is important. If you're in the any other business really, then security is kind of important. Here in the radio business, security is important because we have competitors. I mean, we can't just go around posting our emails all over the place. If somebody did that, I'd be really mad. So that's something that's kind of important, is security. We need security in all of our businesses. And if some employee of yours posts your emails on, say, a forum, that's kind of a big deal. So it's not surprising that Mr. Kalbasi is being charged with quite a few criminal charges, but it's also an illustration of how we need to be very secure. I'm a security advocate, I guess you could say, in that I really emphasize that everyone needs to be secure in their person, papers, houses, effects, and all that sort of thing, mostly because government's not going to protect you when it comes to that sort of thing. So you have to protect yourself with a strong email, with a really strong email, with encryption, with all sorts of different things that you can use to protect yourself from unreasonable searches and seizures. Because again, government's not going to help you out when it comes to unreasonable searches and seizures. In fact, it's more likely that government's going to wreck you when it comes to unreasonable searches and seizures. So really be careful when it comes to security. Use encryption, use a strong password that has numbers and letters and caps and all sorts of cool stuff, and special symbols and characters and such that are less easy to guess. Like, for instance, if it's in the security questions, don't make it your password, your wife's maiden name or your maiden name or your first pet's name or the street you lived on, because all of these things can be phished from you. By phished, I mean they can be obtained from you. Like, say I call you and I just ask you what your first pet's name was for a survey, and you might actually answer the question. I mean, I don't think you would because you're a smart person, but you'd be surprised. Some people would actually answer that question. And then if that's a security answer, then there you go. You've pretty much got it cinched. So it's really, really annoying when that sort of thing happens. But again, it does happen more often than you'd think. And it's not really to say that the people who that happens to are are dumb or anything. It's just that it's ill education, I guess would be the best way to put it. It is ill education. People don't know how to be secure on the computer. There are lots of different ways that can help you out, actually. You can encrypt your drives. That might be a little bit of a drastic measure and perhaps over the heads of some people. Not because they're dumb, but because computers are confusing and weird and scary sometimes. But you can actually encrypt your phone. In fact, some Apple phones are actually encrypted by default. Android has been working on that for a little while. You can encrypt your phones quite easily. A big tip I can give you, though, is to have a PIN code. Don't use the fingerprint scanner. Don't do that. That's a bad idea for many different reasons. One, of course, is that your fingerprint can be collected without your consent by, say, Apple or Android or whatever other company. So that's not so great. But another thing is, in doing that, you're essentially sending telemetry data, or not telemetry data, but personal information to another company. You might not even think about it. You just think, well, it's a fingerprint scanner. It doesn't send any information, but actually it does. Another reason to use a PIN code instead of a fingerprint scanner or a voice print or face identification or whatever is that a face print is physical evidence. A fingerprint is physical evidence, but a PIN code is mental evidence, which cannot be taken from you, can't be forced from you. So set a secure PIN code on your phone, make it 6 digits or whatever, and make sure that there's not any recurring digits, although I'm guilty of that too, don't worry, but make sure there aren't any recurring digits, and you're much more secure with your phone. In fact, there was a case where there was I'm not defending this guy, but it's an interesting case anyway. There was a person who was being accused of, I think, running a prostitution ring, and he had one of those Android passwords where you have to drag the thing across and it makes sort of a weird, like, tree of life pattern, and he had one of those on his phone, and the police couldn't crack it, and he wasn't going to give it up, so they had to actually contact Google to unlock his phone, which was interesting nonetheless. It would buy you some time if you're being wrongfully accused. And if your phone gets seized from you and you have a PIN code, chances are the cops can't get into it. So that's on your side as well. If your phone gets stolen from you as well, that means that the PIN code can't be guessed, if you have an unguessable PIN code anyway. So don't make it your birth date. Like for me, it would be 1995. I would never set any password of mine to be 1995. That would just be a really bad idea. So let's say you're born in 1960. Don't make that your PIN code. Don't ever make that your PIN code. Say you're born in 1973. Don't make that your PIN code either. It's just a bad idea because it can be guessed. I can estimate how old the guy was who I stole the phone from, and I can just punch in 1970 and work up from there, and eventually I'll get it, if that's your PIN code, in fact. So don't make that your PIN code. It's very important that you not do that. Well, speaking of security, the feds are alleging that 4 men actually, executed a heist of $1 million worth of MacBook Airs. So they stole, I think, 2 or 3 of them. The way federal prosecutors tell it, not only did 4 men conspire to steal a large quantity of MacBook Airs, but they also did a really bad job of covering up. The men were arrested on Wednesday and appeared before a federal judge in White Plains, New York. They're accused of participating in a scheme to steal, transport, and sell a shipment of approximately 1,200 computers valued at over $1 million, and they were bound for 2 public high schools in New Jersey. According to the criminal complaint, one of the men, Anton Saljanin, was hired to transport 1,195 laptops from a vendor in Massachusetts on January 15th, 2014, after having successfully delivered 1,300 other laptops. Saljanin appears to have stopped at a home in Yorktown Heights, New York, where he left the large rented Penske truck in a parking lot overnight. Bad idea. When he came back the next day, he told police the truck was gone. Of course, he told the authorities, and he had no idea who could have done such a thing, nor did anyone else know that he was making the delivery. Later in the day, however, Saljanin told Yorktown police that he went looking for the truck and happened to find it in a parking lot just off of Interstate 84 in Danbury, Connecticut, approximately 27 miles away. He claimed that he spotted it from the highway just by coincidence. Coincidence piling upon coincidence does not really help you out in a police investigation. But when a detective turned up at the Yorktown location where the Penske truck was supposed to have been stolen from, he did not find any broken glass on the ground, meaning that somebody got into the truck without actually breaking in, which of course could mean that it was not hot-wired, but you could use one of those Slim Jims. There we go. I'm not big on criminal vernacular. One of those Slim Jims to hack into the car. I mean, that could be done, I suppose. So that's not immediately indicative of an inside job, but anyway, he did not find any broken glass on the ground. Meanwhile, a second detective, upon arriving at the Danbury parking lot, found broken glass, suggesting that a window had in fact been smashed there rather than in Yorktown. They then reasoned that the truck could not have been forcibly stolen from Yorktown and then abandoned in Danbury. Both detectives then concluded that the truck would not have been visible in the Danbury parking lot to a driver passing by on Interstate 84. So unless he's driving his truck from a ladder, he probably wouldn't be seeing the car down there in the parking lot from I-24 or I-84, I should say. Keep in mind that interstates tend to have pretty big guardrails or concrete blocks that would prevent you from seeing over the edge. Yeah. Surveillance footage later showed that the truck was stopped at a 7-Eleven in Somers, New York, while Salginin and his brother, Gyon Salginin, who had accompanied him, are seen for a few minutes. By 9:45 p.m., the time the truck was supposed to have been stolen, it was seen heading for the Front Street parking lot in Yorktown. But rather than take it the most direct route, the truck was then captured on the footage as taking a circuitous route, circular, I guess, near the home of another of the defendants, Ujka Vulaj. So, long story short, kind of an inside job. The four men have been released on bail, and the three of their attorneys did not immediately respond to your request for comment. Ted Green, the lawyer listed for Anton Salginin, said that he no longer represented him, and when Ars Technica asked why, he declined to answer, probably because this is an unwinnable case. So, don't steal MacBook Airs is the moral of the story here, especially $1 million worth of MacBook Airs. How did he expect to resell them anyway? Like, how are you going to resell $1 million worth of MacBook Airs? Granted, that's probably not as many MacBook Airs as we would think, but still, how do you expect to resell $1 million worth of MacBook Airs? Who knows, man? One of those, I don't know. It's one of those really dumb criminal stories, I suppose. Oh, well. You know, I'm getting kind of hungry over here, seeing as I'm into lunchtime and I haven't eaten yet, and I'm thinking of getting some authentic Mexican food, which you can get from Delia's. They have a rich selection. They have loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, enchiladas with beef, chicken, and pork. They also have quesadillas. It's on Dayton Pike right near the Thrasher Light. They have the freshest ingredients, which are, of course, cooked to perfection. Go there for lunch or dinner to treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. They have taco salad, which is number 19 on the menu, which is $6.25, and you can get $1 off of that if you mention Hot News Talk Radio. Call them at 521-7145. That's 521-7145. They also have free iced tea. You can't beat that because their iced tea is actually really dang good. So check out Delia's. Again, it's on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light if you want some authentic Mexican food made by real live Mexican people, or at least people who originate from Mexico or have Mexican ancestry. I'm sure they're very American, but you get the idea. Authentic Mexican food is the idea that we're trying to push here, and you can get that at Delia's, which sounds really good because I'm kind of very hungry right now. What are the rules of thumb of radio? Some inside knowledge for you is that you don't eat before you go on the air. And I take that to mean don't eat at all before you go on the air. So I don't eat much at all before I go on the air. And that means that I'm really hungry right now. And if you are too, you should definitely check out Delia's because they have authentic, real, really good Mexican food. We go there quite a bit over here at Hot News Talk Radio, and you really just can't beat it. Uber is expanding internationally into 100 Chinese cities over the next year. Uber is aiming to expand to 100 additional cities in China over the next year. Company CEO Travis Kalanick said today, doubling the ride-hailing service's previous target. Reuters is saying that the announcement comes after Uber in China raised an additional $1.2 billion in financing. The company currently operates in 11 Chinese cities. Now, keep in mind, China is a huge country, and so operating in 11 Chinese cities means if they're big cities, you have a huge customer base. Not sure if Uber's in Hong Kong, but if it is, that means that there's tons of money flowing in there too. So Kalanick also spoke about Uber's close relationship with Baidu at yesterday's event, saying that the search giant, again, Baidu is a Chinese search engine, kind of like Google, except Chinese, had made it easier for the government, or rather the company, to meet the government officials that want to shepherd our kind of innovation and our kind of project into these cities. He added that Uber is looking forward to new Chinese regulations for the ride-hailing industry, peppering his speech with words like harmony and stability, which are commonly used in government messaging. So basically, you want to use these kind of words to make it seem like you're buddy-buddy with the Chinese, even if you aren't in spirit. So Uber is expanding into China and is apparently making quite a bit of money with $1.8 billion in financing. You can't really beat that. Amazon is reportedly going to be making a tablet that only costs $50. So you can't really beat that, but Amazon isn't really having a whole lot of success in the hardware market. So is a $100 tablet just what it needs? Amazon hasn't really had very good success with selling electronics. According to the Wall Street Journal, Amazon is preparing to aggressively attack the super cheap tablet market this holiday season, of course, with a $50 device that has a 6-inch screen. That's half the price of the company's current 6-inch Fire HD tablet, and even less expensive, or sorry, half the price, I should say, not half the size, half the price of the current 6-inch Fire HD tablet, and even less expensive than the company's Kindle reader, which starts at $79. So the low-end tablet market is kind of a strange place with lots of just awful stuff, but Amazon has actually made some pretty decent inexpensive devices so far, and perhaps we'll be seeing more of that. And so the current 6-inch Fire HD tablet is one of the cheapest tablets that's actually worth buying. And while the idea of an even cheaper tablet sounds pretty wild, anything that performs less capably than Amazon's current low-end tablet could be too compromised to be usable. There aren't any specs yet, but the Wall Street Journal is suggesting that the $50 device will test the limits of cost savings. Even a stereo speaker is reportedly too rich for this tablet. So it's not going to be your media streaming device by any means, but it could be just for a bare bones like Amazon ebook reader. It could be usable. Now, I'm not big into the ebook thing personally, just because I'm not, I don't know, I have a problem focusing on it, and I mostly read comics when I'm going to read something on a digital device. That's just how I am. So it's, I don't know, not very useful for me, but if you're looking for, say, a cool gift idea that looks more expensive than it actually is, maybe a $50 Amazon tablet will be for you. If you need something cheap and quick so you can read ebooks when you're on vacation, maybe that'll be for you too. But other than that, I wouldn't really put much money into a $50 tablet, or rather I'd put $50 into a $50 tablet, but I wouldn't really put a whole lot of high hopes towards it anyway. There might be some good opportunities for hacking though. Who knows what sort of cool things you could do with the $50 tablet. Maybe the price will make it worth your while if you can run some like lightweight Linux distribution on it. Maybe that could be kind of interesting. But again, I don't know what you could use it for. Maybe a dumb terminal or something, but you can do that with your phone anyway. So I don't know. $50 Amazon tablet seems like another kind of sort of a swing and a miss for Amazon. Amazon's not been doing so great when it comes to hardware. Now, Amazon cloud services are a whole other story, but Amazon hardware, haven't really been seeing a whole lot of great stuff coming out of Amazon. After all, the $100 phone didn't really go over so well at all. They packed a lot of useless stuff into it. So I don't know. Amazon's not doing too great on the hardware side, but maybe this could be the killer app that they need, or the killer app runner that they need. Anyway, this is Digital Drive right here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240. We are everywhere. Listen live to Hot News Talk Radio at hotnewstalkradio.com. You can download the TuneIn Radio app for your smartphone, even your Amazon smartphone. If you actually have one, search for Hot News Talk Radio on there. Hot News Talk Radio is also on Twitter, where you report the world decides. That's AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We have a ton of great programming here as well. We have Daybreak USA. We have the David Tulis Show. We got the Eric Judd Show. We have, well, my show. We have Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Clutch with Keon Rose. 5 o'clock, we have the best news show in the world. We have Hot News Live at 5, which carries the best local news you could ever ask for, right here on Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and hotnewstalkradio.com as well. The website's a pretty kicking place to listen to us, by the way, too. That's where I usually listen when I'm sitting at my desktop, just because I like the audio quality. So hotnewstalkradio.com. Be sure to check it out right here, Hot News Talk Radio.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode.